Welcome to Reading Inspires by Reading is Fundamental. I'm your host, Dr. Erin Bailey. This podcast celebrates the power of books and the joy of reading. In each episode, we talk with educators, librarians, families, authors, and literacy champions to explore one big question: what does reading inspire for you? Through stories, research, and real-world experiences from classrooms, libraries, and homes, we explore what literacy looks like and why it matters. Whether you're nurturing young readers, shaping learning spaces, or simply love a good book, we're glad you're here. Be sure to subscribe to get the latest episode. Let's get inspired. Welcome, everyone. Joining us today are Christine Hjorth, author of the Aligned Decodables and CEO of Aligned Educational Resources, Cherish Mims, Epic's manager of education relations and a former classroom teacher, and Letitia Truslow, who leads Epic's School Plus and customer experience, all bringing unique perspectives on how we can give educators the right tools and help more kids discover the joy and confidence that comes with reading. So welcome. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
So Epic is known for making books accessible digitally. It's an ebook platform who has recently joined up with Reading is Fundamental on a physical library refresh in Los Angeles, which I had the opportunity to attend, where RIF provided print books. Why was it so important for Epic to support a print literacy initiative? And what does that say about the role of digital and print books working together to help children become successful readers?
Erin, I love this question. It really speaks to our shared mission. So, think stories are stories, books are books. And we know that children who grow up surrounded by books tend to develop stronger literacy skills. And so what better way to complement one another than physical books, which, let's face it, take up a lot of space. Sometimes they're expensive. With a digital platform, we have 40,000 titles on the Epic platform. And so, this is an opportunity for whether it's in a different environment to use it on the go, in a car, on vacation. But there's just lots of synergy between the two. And again, this is all about our shared mission around literacy for children.
Yeah, I love that. It's something actually that no one's mentioned before about the fact that physical books take up space and that digital books are great for on the go. I mean, you have at your fingertips thousands of books. It's great for travel, in the car, anywhere that you are. So I think we've talked a lot about how print books can be, more expensive, but the space element is key too. So thank you for adding that to the conversation. So something very exciting is that Epic is adding over 250 decodable books to your platform. And I have to make sure I pronounce decodable so everyone can understand me, because one time I was confused for saying Decodables, which is kind of funny, thinking the topic of decodables is phonics. So Christine, can you give our audience a little working definition around what are decodable books and why are they such an important part of the science of reading, and how do they help young readers build that strong foundation for reading?
Absolutely. So a decodable book is essentially at its heart a phonics book. And in the past, we had phonics books I taught in the early 2000s, and they would focus on a sound, for example, like the digraph SH. The problem with those books were it never paid attention to what the child was actually learning at the time. So the book that had an SH sound in it might have the word shuttle in kindergarten, where a student in kindergarten, there's a lot of skills in that word that they cannot sound out. So what decodables do is they take what they're learning in sequence and include only those sounds as they're moving through the scope and sequence. So if you have, usually digraph comes right after consonants and short vowels. So then you're going to have words like ship instead of shuttle. The reason that decodables are so good is because it practices the skills in real time that the students are learning in a real format. So if they're learning phonics skills, then they're adding one to the decoding sequence and they're practicing that at the right time to get those skills, to get the confidence, and to know that reading is just about building those skills.
Amazing. So 250 is a lot. Can you explain why did you need so many? And you've shared with me some great efforts that you put into making sure that these resources are actually aligned to curriculum that teachers are already using. Can you share a little bit about that?
Well, I can take that question too. So when I started writing, I was a first grade teacher. And when I was in the classroom, I was writing decodable materials for my class at the time. And so what I realized is that I could make more stories and more books and have them illustrated to help lots of students. But the problem with that is if you don't know where it falls into the scope and sequence, you don't know how to use it appropriately. So, for example, technically everything is decodable. The book War and Peace is decodable to you,
Mm.
but it isn't decodable to a kindergartner. So you need to know in that scope and sequence, what have they already learned and where are they going? And the problem is that there's 23 to 30 different curriculums, and you'd be surprised how different their scope and sequences are. So you can't just say, well, scope and sequence is CBC, short vowel, then blends, then digraphs, then silent E. They are all mixed up. So the only way for the teacher in the past to use them was to look at the skills on the back of the book and then try to figure out where this book fell, which is a lot of work. I was a first grade teacher. I did not have a lot of time to do that. So when I started doing it myself, I thought the best way to do this is to actually make the alignment chart so that it's all done for the teachers already. So when I started working with Epic, it was awesome because I was able to explain this to them and they set it up on the platform in a way that's easy for teachers to find their own curriculum and then find the alignment chart to use the books.
Yeah, I taught first grade as well, so I would definitely use that kind of
Yeah.
chart. I find that I mean, I'd probably be that person who printed it out and had it on a clipboard, honestly.
Definitely. It's available in PDF format. I would have it taped behind my desk, you know what I mean? And know, okay, these are the books that I want to use.
Amazing. So Cherish, where do these decodables books fit into effective literacy instruction? We talked about these being an add-on to curriculum that's already being used. What are some practical ways that teachers can use them to help their students be more confident readers?
Great question. So I believe the key to use decodable texts is as a bridge between that direct phonics instruction and those authentic reading experiences. So this is going to allow those students to have repeated opportunities to practice the phonetic skill that's directly being taught, and most importantly, experience reading success to build and boost their confidence. So for example, if a teacher is teaching a specific phonetic skill that week, whether that's a short vowel or consonant blend from their chart, they would then choose a decodable text to pair it with that gives them repeated opportunities to practice those patterns. So after directly teaching that skill, students can then reread that text with a partner or independently or in a small group or one-on-one with the teacher to apply those patterns and skills within that book. I would say another opportunity is through rereading. That's an easy way to embed this in instruction. So the first read of that decodable text is going to be for accuracy, reading with accuracy, and that's going to be typically with the teacher or whole group. And then that way, that second and third time reading that decodable text, it could be for fluency, expression, comprehension. Again, this is just allowing that student to experience success and really shift their mindset so that they can say, I can do this, I can read this, and they're experiencing that confidence boost that they need to become independent readers.
I love that. And I imagine this is helpful for families too, right? Like if I'm a family who doesn't have a background in literacy and I get a note home that just says, this week we're working on digraphs, I might not know what that means. But if I have a tangible book that I can
Yes.
practice digraphs, then I'm like, oh, it's, H brothers or however I learned it, whatever I
Yes.
want to call it with my child that's going to be fun and bring it to life.
Correct. My daughter just wrapped up first grade, and her teacher would do exactly that. They would send home whatever phonics skill they were learning for that week, and also send a paired text. And that way, we could work through those skills at home. Well, with Epic, you can easily assign that collection specifically on that phonetic skill that they're practicing, or just an individual book. You can assign it to families and just really equip them with the access to the tools available, so that families are confident with supporting their student at home reading.
That's
So
amazing. And I'm like that assigning too, because like you said, like you were saying earlier, there's 250 books, right? And they don't all follow the same, not every curriculum
mhm.
follows the same scope and sequence. So as a family member, I might not know which. I'm like, I know my child needs to read decodable books. I'm not sure which ones or in which order. So being able to have that assigned, I can see is super beneficial too. And I should mention, I will also include the link to that in the show notes for everyone who wants to get access to these.
I also wanted to add that as a first grade teacher, I was trying to create all the books that I would want in my classroom.
Mm.
So what's really great is that I have different kinds of decodables. So there's the story ones, which you can work on comprehension and vocab. And there's also ones called blending books that are working just on the sounds and putting it together and sentence level comprehension. There's fluency books that are like a sentence pyramid so that they're rereading the sentence. So there's lots of different kinds. And there's some called passage books that don't have any pictures. So you're working fully on
The text.
comprehension. So a teacher has a lot of opportunities. If you're working with the, SH sound, you might have 3 different books that you can use to practice that skill.
Yeah, that's a variety is key. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
goodness, decodables have come such a long
Yes.
way. I mean, how many times can you read that the fat cat sat on the mat before
That's
you're
right.
just bored of it, right? So
Right.
I'm wondering, Christine, if you can share a little bit about like what kind of elements of story writing and story creation went into this effort to make them not boring, you know?
That's a great question. So I actually taught my own children. I have two teenagers now, using the Bob books, which there's nothing wrong with the Bob books. They're very simple and that worked for the time, but they are obviously pretty bland, And so what happened was when I was teaching, I was actually teaching first graders how to write. And so I would make little stories with them all the time. And it actually kind of honed my silly story
Hmm.
writing. And so I was looking for ways to make it engaging that they were a little sillier or that they didn't quite know what was going to happen in the story. And by just focusing on, okay, these are the only words I can use. I'm going to write a story just with these words. And another thing that makes them engaging is that because I worked with 6-year-olds, I think, I have a little bit more understanding of what's funny to a 6-year-old,
Yeah.
and so I think sometimes as teachers, we've seen materials that maybe were written by teachers of older students and don't necessarily know like what 6-year-olds are really engaged in, and what they think is silly. So that definitely helped me. And another way I made them engaging was to, which I could talk further about, I have like what's called a flashcard format. So with decodables, obviously, we know that the cueing system is not really, we do not want them to picture cue. We don't want them to use the picture to try to guess or predict what a word might be. And so what I did was the sentence is alone on a page. They have to read it without any clue. But when they turn the page, they get to see the picture that goes with the sentence. And that allowed me for 2 things. Number 1, it really focuses on decoding. But number 2, it can build engagement. Because what I did was, the sentence, sometimes they think they know what they're going to see when they turn the page, but I kind of flip the switch on them. You know what I mean? So that when they turn the page, they see something silly and it makes them want to keep going to see what the next thing is.
I think that's really cool too for children's imaginations. Like I vividly remember when I was in first grade, my teacher read aloud to us one time, and it was only one time that she did this. The book was Shrek. And so she read aloud Shrek to us and actually had us draw the pictures that we thought went with Shrek, which was really cool because I don't, you knew Shrek was an ogre and ugly and all that, but you wouldn't know what the picture said. So and that experience stuck with me all these years. So I think it's great for creativity. The other thing is it shows kind of the power of the difference between decoding and the pictures and your background knowledge too, right? Because if I can read the word cat and I know C is k, A is a, and T is t, and I can blend them together, my personal experiences are what's gonna shape. When I just read the word cat without any pictures, do I see a black cat like Halloween? Do I see Garfield? And so then for you to kind of like flip it on them shows students like how things can be so different,
And it's also, in terms of comprehension, one of the biggest things that's pushed right now is visualization. It's reading those words and visualizing what it's going to be, because when you get to books without pictures, obviously that's what you're going to need to do. So Cats is a great example. I have a book named Cats, and it's, about these 2 little cats, and it says the cat can sip. Okay, so you might think a cat sitting in front of a bowl and he's, licking the thing, but really they're sitting, when you turn the page, at a table with little teacups. You know what I mean? And so it's a chance for them to be like, you think you know what you're going to see, but you don't know what you're going to see. And it's
I love
also a
that.
great way to build vocabulary because, you know, I can use a lot of words like there's a book called Cliff the Pest, and he does all sorts of crazy things, but he flops on the ducks. Okay, what does it mean to flop? You know, it's different than jumping. You know what I mean? So in the picture, then they get to see, oh, he's full out. He's ready to, you know, flop on top of them. So you can really build that vocabulary by using the different pictures and using the different words.
I love that. I wanted to add one thing because based on what you both were talking about and students experiencing, because we don't want them to think phonics is like the end goal.
That's right.
We want them to make meaningful reading experiences and know that they're reading to become independent learners, dreamers, thinkers. And so engaging with the text post, applying those skills by retelling or, you know, what was your favorite part? Or having them, you know, make those visualizations or identifying character feelings, that's going to push them beyond that phonics instruction and make that experience meaningful for them. So I think that's a great, you know, just quick teaching strategy that educators can use as well to really make that reading stick.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm wondering, I mean, we all are clearly passionate about the benefits of decodable text. I'm wondering, Letitia, if you can share what inspired Epic to expand its decodable offerings, assuming there were, you know, there were some decodables in there, but to really put the emphasis on creating these 250 books and aligning them to the different curriculum.
Yeah, I think, Erin, the short answer is relationships. So we at Epic, we prioritize relationship building with districts and principals and superintendents, teachers, parents, students, you know, and it's in that vein. You know, part of relationship was with one of our larger districts, very active and engaged with the Epic product. They came to us and said, hey, we need, you know, we could really use some more decodables. And that started a conversation. That one, you know, request started quite a bit of back and forth internally within the organization, within Epic, trying to understand more about, well, what is it that you're looking for? We had some decodables on the platform. You know, tell us a bit more. Why aren't those, you know, meeting your needs? What are your needs? Like, what would meet your needs? And so really, we did that deep dive. And very spontaneously, after I had been talking with our content team, they work with the publishers. We have about 250 publisher partners. And so I'd been talking to them internally, you know, this is what we're hearing. We'd really like to bring some more decodables online. And then lo and behold, at a conference, the NCTE conference, National Conference for Teachers of English, we at our Epic booth met Christine, who's on the call. We met Christine. Christine came to the booth. We started chatting. She said the word decodables. And the next thing you know, we are running, not walking, towards Christine's books. And we're starting a project to bring them, ingest them into the Epic platform. And as Christine said, also provide teachers with the scope and sequence and the alignment charts that they need in order to find exactly what they're looking for at that time. So the collections, the 250 books, you know, they are organized based on curricula. So the 23 curricula, we put all the books in those separate collections based on the curricula. And so far, all the feedback has been phenomenal. It's been really great. So it goes back to relationship. Really, we have these conversations, we listen, and we took some action.
Amazing. It seems serendipitous, to say the least.
It really was.
Yes, Christine and Cherish, myself, we all say that all the time, how it was incredibly fortuitous. And even to the point where Epic hadn't been attending conferences for quite a while. And this was the first conference that we attended in quite some time. And so the fact that, you know, as we internally had been talking about, you know, where are we going to source decodable titles and quite frankly, like higher quality decodable titles, because what we had on the platform wasn't meeting our teachers' needs. And so, yeah, it was completely serendipitous. It was as if it was meant to be, I think, Christine, right? Like, that you came to us and it just started another conversation.
Because it was really right at the right time, because I've been doing this now for 5 years, and I had said no to a lot of other opportunities that had come up for me, different distributors and things like that. And I just thought I wanted to wait until I found the right one. And so Epic, I really felt I didn't have Epic when I was teaching in the classroom. I would have absolutely loved having Epic if I had taught in the classroom. We've talked before too about, what's great about having a platform that has the decodables, but also be on Epic is that if the students are reading a book called Cats and I have a book called Kits and Pups, which is about baby animals that they can read, just CBC words, but then the teacher can assign other books that are like higher level, like read alouds, or their parents can read it to them. There's a video, and it's amazing because now you can like cross, promote these books, not promote, sorry, assign these books so that if you're doing a unit on baby animals, now they're reading a book, but also have access to all these other books.
I love that word access, Christine.
Yes.
We are always talking about how important that is, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what Epic brings to the table is access to 40,000 titles, which, let's face it, is an awful lot. So there's a ton to sample on that buffet of books. And especially for that at home, outside of school hours, being having access, not having maybe parents are not necessarily able to get to the library for a variety of reasons, and just the ease with which we offer this. We call Epic the Netflix of books, and for a reason, because really there's so much content. To Christine, to your point, So it makes access is simple, and it makes it easy to assign books and read books outside of school.
I'm glad you brought up how read alouds and decodables can support each other. I'm wondering if I can pull on that thread a little bit more. I think a lot of folks out there, families and teachers, are hesitant towards decodables, and I myself was one of these teachers because, and again, this is speaking of decodables of the past. We've come a long way because the stories can be quite dry, and we wanted to have students having like a real literature experience. Can you share a little bit about what you wish families understood about decodables, and teachers and families, and what are the misunderstandings and what do you wish that they understood?
I think that you've pretty much hit on it. The biggest misinformation about decodables is that they're dry, that you cannot teach comprehension with them, that you cannot teach vocabulary with them. And that's just not really true. And the fact that they're not engaging, the fact that they can't learn anything from them, there's so much more that we can do with decodables now if you just kind of have an imagination for it's just words, and I'm going to use whatever words that I can use to, I have books that are based in sports, I have books that are based in, there's a whole nonfiction things, snakes, spiders, dogs, and you can use those while at the same time building in the read alouds, because obviously there's some vocabulary that in kindergarten isn't going to fly. In second grade it will, but in kindergarten it's not. So you want kind of a little bit of both of that.
Mm-hmm. I would agree on that. I think one other misconception would be also that decodables are just for struggling readers.
That's right.
When in fact, no, they're a practice tool for all emerging readers, allowing them the building blocks to decoding skills, because the English language is hard. Learning how to read is hard work, and these students are doing it daily, but it's breaking it into, manageable, smart, segmented pieces for students where they can apply these skills and experience success. Because if they don't build that confidence, experience success, they're not going to want to continue doing it. We want to build them up, build, independent readers, lifelong learners, and Decodables is the key to do that.
I definitely want to follow up on what she said. It's absolutely true. They're not just for struggling readers, and they're not just for kindergartner either. People think of a decodable like CBC words, where I just added to my collection a morphology set, which is really meant for the end of second grade, beginning of third grade, and they're all on Epic. And what they focus on is those prefixes and suffixes. So there's a book, that's about Simone Biles or Taylor Swift, or about. And there's also fiction that is really using that ending. For example, there's a book called Desert Animals, and the ending is NESS. So there's a lot of words in there, like the dryness of the desert, you know what I mean? The quietness of the night, and so teachers can then use that to pull out those words and really drill down on those that suffix in that case, and that's a learning opportunity that isn't a decodable, but really it's focused on something else.
Yeah, I love that. And well, a couple things. I love that there are nonfiction options
Oh,
too.
tons. Yeah.
I think that that's excellent. And to go back to something that you said at the beginning, every book is decodable once you've mastered phonics, right? So it's great that, and I mean, I'm going to use myself as an example. Before we even hit record, I introduced myself and then I asked everyone to go around and I practiced pronouncing your names because names are different origins. So myself as someone who is still learning to read, because I fully believe we are always still learning to read, I learned something new, Christine, about your name, which is Hjorth, and the origin of it and why the HJ makes that what would
Yeah.
typically be like a Y sound, right? And so we are always still learning to read. So I appreciate the fact that they didn't stop at, first,
Yeah.
second grade, and the way that you said that every book is decodable once you've mastered those phonics skills.
For sure. Another thing I wanted to bring up too, in terms of having them all on Epic, or and I also have them in physical copies, is that you can differentiate. When I was in the classroom, one of my biggest thing was trying to differentiate for student needs. And in this case, what I did was there'll be certain books, like a topic like dogs, and there's like 5 different versions. So there's one with just CBC, and then there's one with blends. There's one that adds in higher level sounds, and then vowel teams. So if you have a classroom, let's say a first grade classroom, where we all know you have students on a whole bunch of different levels, you can assign them the books, and everybody's learning about dogs, and everyone's coming back and telling something about dogs without feeling like they're at a disadvantage. So for me, it's always the success and that self-esteem and that loving of reading that really makes a difference.
Which takes us back to that word access.
For sure.
Epic is able to meet every student where they are now,
That's right.
not where we want them to be, but there's something available for every student on Epic.
Amazing. So looking ahead, what do you hope that Epic's expanded decodable collection will have? What impact will it have on classrooms, families, and readers?
Well, I mean, certainly, I think this is where education is going. Thankfully, I think that we're following the science of reading, or at least structured literacy. I don't think everything's been thrown out. I don't think we should throw the baby out with the bathwater, but we're moving towards structured literacy, especially in K through 2. Honestly, I feel like that's where it's really important, is to get those decoding skills in the beginning years, so that when you hit 3rd, 4th grade, you can sound out a word, and then you work on, the higher level comprehension skills. So I think having the access to the decodables is absolutely key.
Let me riff off of that too, Christine, to say that like it would be wonderful to see more at home as well as in classroom engagement. I think sometimes we can think of Epic as the school, it's a tool to use in school, yet there's also an opportunity and an option to read from home. So getting the parents, as we've talked about in this conversation today, sort of looping them in, making these accessible to the parents. So yeah, as you said, Erin, the parents don't need to have a full understanding of what these are and how they work. They just need to know they're available. Here's what the teacher's assigning. And outside of those school hours, then kids can be reading with their parents and practicing. So I think engagement is something we'd all hope to see more of in the future. Cherish, did you want to add anything to that?
I mean, I would say the same thing, kind of what I just said. My hope is, with us expanding the decodable collection, again, it's providing that access of engaging literacy to meet students where they are, giving teachers access to texts that meet all of their needs in the classroom. Because as we know, like Christine said, teachers are going to have students at various reading levels in the classroom, and they may not have text, physical text that they can use to support every student. Because if you're in a first grade classroom and you have kids reading at pre-K, or then you may have some students already reading at a second grade level. That is the classroom of today, where it is across the board various levels, but Epic can give them access to all of those tools and helping also families feel confident with supporting students in the home.
Amazing.
I want to share some of the sweetest things we've heard, and maybe that also puts a punctuation on what you said, Cherish.
Yeah.
Is that honestly, we find with a lot of English language learners that the parents are also learning English alongside of their students.
Mm-hmm.
And so the sweetest thing is hearing from teachers and literacy experts telling us how much the parents have enjoyed using Decodables, reading on the Epic platform, again, learning English alongside their own children. If that doesn't give you goosebumps and make you really happy, I don't know what will, right?
Right.
Just another layer to this, to the whole conversation today.
And on that point, I mean, that's one thing I really focused on. I love words. It's really just obviously from being a writer, I just love them. And with English as a second language, a lot of times it's the different definitions of words that really trip them up. So that's one thing I focused on in the books. Like, for example, in the one book, the pig is in a pen, okay, which is like, you know, the little place where he stays on the farm, but he's jotting with a pen. So it says the pig jots with a pen in the pen. So now you have a discussion about what are these words and why are they the same word, but they're two different things? Because I think that's one thing that's hard for students and English as a second language to be like, well, it's the same word. And that's built right from the beginning. It's not just one lesson, you know what I mean, on you know, words that are spelled the same that mean different things. It's through the entire series.
That's exciting. Well, thank you all so much for sharing that. I always end the episodes with this very challenging question, which is, what does reading inspire for you? And we can start with you, Cherish.
I would say reading inspires me to see what's possible, open new doors to new ideas, different perspectives, and endless possibilities. Allows me to see that every story has power and allows me to dream, learn, and grow as a reader.
Amazing. And Letitia?
Yeah, I would say reading inspires me to explore new worlds, both from the writer's viewpoint and also my own in a creative way. So it's sort of like tapping into my own creativity as well.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking through the story. It's just it's wonderful to dive into other worlds.
Yes.
And for me, I mean, I've always been an avid reader with a big imagination, and it inspires me to think of new things. And a lot of what I focused on is the students who are reading and using books to teach them, you know, about kindness and about helping others and about what is right, what it's like to be, you know, a good person and have perspective. And that's one thing I really focused on.
Amazing. Well, thank you all. I'm so excited for these decodable books to be on Epic. I'm definitely going to check them out myself, and I recommend all listeners to go check them out as well. Thank you for joining. Thank you for listening to Reading Inspires by Reading is Fundamental. I hope today's conversation sparked new ideas, meaningful connections, and a renewed love of reading. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, share it with a fellow literacy champion, and join us next time as we continue exploring what reading inspires.